morning, everyone. Welcome. In this session, I am facilitating Knowledge Topic 5 under Knowledge Module Outcome 1. This topic focuses on communication in the receiving and dispatch environment. I want to emphasize from the start that communication is not a soft skill or an optional skill in warehousing. It is a core operational control that determines whether receiving and dispatch functions succeed or fail. In your role as a receiving and dispatch clerk, you are constantly handling information. You receive information from suppliers, drivers, supervisors, systems, and documents. You also pass information on to inventory control, finance, sales, transport, and management. If this information is inaccurate, delayed, or incomplete, the physical movement of stock becomes meaningless. Many learners think warehouse problems come from lifting, packing, or counting mistakes. In reality, most warehouse failures are caused by communication failures. That is why this topic is included in assessments, audits, and workplace performance reviews. By the end of this session, you must be able to confidently explain how communication takes place in the receiving and dispatch environment, describe the different communication methods used in the workplace, explain why communication accuracy and timeliness are critical, and explain the consequences of poor communication for stock control, service delivery, safety, and business performance. Before I explain communication methods, I first want you to understand why communication is so critical in receiving and dispatch operations. I explained that the receiving and dispatch environment is one of the busiest areas in any organization. Multiple activities take place at the same time, and many departments rely on the information generated in this area. Because of this, communication is not informal or casual. It must be structured and controlled. In receiving, communication starts the moment a delivery arrives. The receiving clerk must communicate quantities, condition of goods, discrepancies, and acceptance or rejection of stock. This information does not stay in the warehouse. It moves to inventory control, procurement, finance, and sometimes sales. In dispatch, communication starts when an order is released. Picking instructions, dispatch notes, loading schedules, and delivery confirmations must be communicated clearly. If dispatch communication fails, customers receive incorrect deliveries or no deliveries at all. I emphasize that communication supports 4 key operational areas. Firstly, accuracy. Clear communication ensures that what is physically received or dispatched is exactly what is recorded on the system. Secondly, efficiency. When communication is clear, work is done once, not repeated or corrected. Thirdly, safety. Hazards, damages, and risks can only be controlled if they are communicated immediately. Fourthly, service delivery. Reliable communication allows both internal and external customers to plan and trust the organization. Now that we understand why communication is important, let us look at the different ways communication happens in the warehouse. In this section, I explain that communication in receiving and dispatch takes place through different methods. Each method has a specific purpose, and using the wrong method can create confusion or risk. The main communication methods used in the warehouse are verbal, written, electronic, and visual communication. Verbal communication is used when information must be shared immediately. For example, when a delivery arrives damaged, the receiving clerk must verbally inform the supervisor without delay. However, I stress that verbal communication alone is not enough. All critical verbal messages must be supported by written or electronic records to create accountability. Written communication creates formal records. This includes delivery notes, goods received notes, picking slips, discrepancy reports, and registers. Written communication is essential for audits, investigations, and dispute resolution because it provides proof of what was received, dispatched, or reported. Electronic communication includes warehouse management systems, scanners, emails, and internal platforms. Electronic communication allows information to be shared quickly across departments and ensures traceability. In modern warehouses, electronic communication links physical activities directly to system records. Visual communication includes labels, signage, color coding, floor markings, and safety symbols. Visual communication reduces reliance on verbal instructions and helps workers quickly identify stock, locations, and hazards. Communication methods are important, but what matters most is how information flows between departments. I now explain that communication follows a flow, just like stock follows a flow. When communication flow breaks down, operations fail. In receiving, communication begins when stock arrives at the warehouse. The receiving clerk checks the delivery and records the information on documentation and systems. This information then flows to inventory control for stock updates, finance for payment processing, and procurement for supplier performance monitoring. In dispatch, communication begins with an order or instruction from sales, planning, or management. Once stock is picked and dispatched, confirmation information flows back to sales, finance, and transport. Each department relies on the accuracy and timing of this information. I emphasize that each handover point is a risk point. If information is incomplete, inaccurate, or late at any stage, the next department works with incorrect data. This leads to wrong decisions, delays, and conflict between departments. To fully understand communication, we must also understand what happens when communication fails. In this section, I explain the real consequences of poor communication. When communication fails, stock is received incorrectly, dispatched incorrectly, or recorded incorrectly. This leads to stock shortages, excess stock, customer complaints, and service failures. Poor communication also causes conflict. Departments begin blaming one another instead of solving problems. This damages teamwork and slows down operations. I now explain what effective communication looks like in real workplace situations. Effective communication is not about talking more, but about communicating accurately, on time, and through the correct channel. Effective communication starts with accuracy. You must communicate facts, not assumptions. If stock is short, you report the exact quantity received. If stock is damaged, you describe the damage clearly and objectively. Timeliness is equally important. Information must be shared as soon as it is known, not hours later when corrective action is no longer possible. Effective communication also means using the correct channel. Urgent issues must be reported verbally and followed up in writing. Routine information must be captured correctly on systems or reports. I also emphasize professionalism. Even under pressure, communication must remain respectful, factual, and solution-focused. Professional communication builds trust, and trust allows departments to act confidently on the information you provide. I also explain the financial impact of poor communication. Errors result in additional transport costs, returns, penalties, supplier disputes, and lost customers. From a safety perspective, failure to communicate hazards or damages can result in serious injuries or accidents. I stress that audits and investigations often identify communication breakdowns as the root cause of operational failures. Now that we understand the risks, let us focus on what effective communication looks like in practice. Let me summarize today's session. We focused on communication in the receiving and dispatch environment. We examined why communication is critical, the methods of communication used, how communication flows through receiving and dispatch operations, the consequences of poor communication, and what effective communication looks like in practice. For assessments, you must be able to explain communication processes, communication methods, and the impact of good and poor communication. You must also be able to give practical warehouse examples. My final message is this: stock moves physically, but warehouses operate successfully because information moves correctly. Your responsibility as a receiving and dispatch clerk is to ensure that information is accurate, timely, and professional at all times. See you at the next session.